Every man wants to be the kind of man who stands, the man who does not fold when the pressure comes, the man who is still there when everyone else has drifted. But standing is not something you do in the moment. By the time the storm hits, it is too late to start building. You stand on what you already built, or you fall on what you never did. For 4 weeks, we have been laying stones. We said, guard your life and answer to God. We said, no half measures, obey all the way. We said, move while you are still afraid. And last week, we said, become the same man in private that you are in public, because that is what qualifies you to carry the weight. 4 stones. This week, we do 2 things with them. We lay the last one, and then we stack the whole foundation into the one thing it was always building toward. You build, and then you stand. My name is Zach Powell, and the way I understand what God has called me to is simple. We are called to be soldiers, disciples, and fishers of men for Christ. Soldiers because this life is not casual. There is a real enemy, and no man sits it out. Disciples because none of us is above the word. We are under it, still being formed. And fishers of men because as disciples, he calls us to pull others out of the dark and into his light. This is the 5th teaching in a season, built on a book I wrote called Lessons of the Father. And this week we close the foundation. So let's lay the last stone. Before a man stands, he builds. And here's where most men get it backwards. They want the influence before they have built anything to support it. They want to be followed before they have proven they can be trusted. They want to lead out there before they have put anything in order in here. Listen to what Paul tells Timothy, 1 Timothy chapter 3, verses 4 and 5. He must manage his own family well and see that his children obey him, and do so in a manner worthy of full respect. If anyone does not know how to manage his own family, how can he take care of God's church? Read what Paul is doing here. He is setting the requirement for spiritual leadership, and the requirement is not charisma, it is not giftedness, it is not how well a man speaks. It is whether he has built order in his own house. And then Paul asks a question that should stop a man cold. If a man cannot manage his own family, how is he going to take care of anything bigger? That is not an insult, it is a principle. The smaller thing is the proving ground for the longer one. A man does not get to skip the house and go straight to the influence. The house is the test. And men, hear me. This is not about having a perfect home. None of us has that. It is about whether you are building or whether you have just been living there. There is a difference between a man who is present in his house and a man who is building something in it. One is just occupying space. The other is laying a foundation. Now look at the second man Paul points to. Look at Ezra. Ezra chapter 7, verse 10. For Ezra had devoted himself to the study and observance of the law of the Lord, and to teaching its decrees and laws in Israel. Watch the order in that verse. It matters. First, Ezra devoted himself to the study of the word. Second, to the observance of it. He did it himself. And only third, to teaching it to others. Study, obey, then teach. He built it in himself before he handed it to anyone else. And that is the order most men want to reverse. They want to teach what they have not studied. They want to lead what they have not lived. They want to require of their family what they have not built in themselves. And here's the hard line under all of it. You cannot require what you do not practice. You cannot demand discipline from a son while you live undisciplined. You cannot call your home to a standard you are quietly ignoring. You cannot lead anyone past where you yourself have actually gone. And I have to be honest with you here. This is the one thing that searches me. Because it is easy to teach a thing. I do it every week. It is harder to make sure I am building it in my own house before I open my mouth about it to anyone else. I am not standing on the far side of this telling you I have arrived. I am building too. Same house, same work, same fight. So that is the last stone. Build before you lead. Build in here before you reach out there. Now we stack all of it. Because here's the whole point of a foundation. You do not build a foundation to look at it. You build it so that something can stand on it when the weight comes. And the weight always comes. Listen to Paul. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 13. Therefore, put on the full armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground, and after you have done everything, to stand. Notice Paul does not say attack. He does not say charge. He does not say conquer. He says stand. And then, after you have done everything, he says it again, stand. Because the test of a man is not whether he can start strong. It is whether he is still standing when the day of evil comes. And notice when you put the armor on. You do not put it on when the attack starts. By then it's too late. You put it on before. You build before. You prepare before. The standing happens in the storm, but the building happens in the calm, long before the storm shows up. This is why we spent 4 weeks on stones. The vigilance of week 1, the full obedience of week 2, the courage to move from week 3, the private integrity of week 4. Every one of those was armor. Every one of those was a stone in the foundation you are going to stand on. A man who guarded nothing has nothing to stand on when he is tested. A man who obeyed halfway has a wall with a hole in it. A man who never moved is already on the ground. A man with no private integrity will not survive public pressure. But a man who built, a man who laid the stones, when the day of evil comes, he is still standing. Not because he is stronger than other men, because he built when no one was making him. Now hear the psalm, because this is what the man looks like. Psalm 112, verses 6 and 7. Surely the righteous will never be shaken. They have no fear of bad news. Their hearts are steadfast, trusting in the Lord. Look at that man. Bad news comes, and he is not shaken. Not because the bad news is not real, not because his life is easy, but because his heart is steadfast, trusting in the Lord. He is anchored, and an anchored man does not move every time the wind changes. That is the difference between drifting and standing. A drifting man moves with every pressure, every mood, every offense, every hard week. A standing man has decided what he is built on, and he does not come off it. And here's the last thing, and it is the whole heart of this whole foundation. Standing firm is not loud. It is not a man flexing. It is not a man making noise about how strong he is. Standing firm is a man holding his ground quietly, when it would be so much easier to drift, because he built something underneath himself, and he is not going to abandon it. It is easier to drift than to stand. Drift costs nothing in the moment. Standing costs you something every single day. But the man who pays that cost, daily, quietly, without applause, is the man still standing when everything around him has come down. You build, and then you stand. That is the foundation. So here's the charge this week, and it gathers the whole foundation into 2 moves. First, build one thing. Pick one area of your own house that is not in order and start building it this week. Not your wife's part, not your kid's part, yours. The thing you have been requiring of everyone else while quietly skipping it yourself. Build it in you first this week. Second, stand on one thing. Name the one place you have been drifting, where you keep moving with the pressure instead of holding your ground. And this week, you plant your feet. You decide what you are built on, and you stop coming off it. Build one thing, stand on one thing. That is the whole foundation in 2 moves. And I am doing both this week, in my own house, right alongside you. Same road, same fight. If these 5 weeks have been building something in you, subscribe and stay in it. We just finished the foundation. We are not slowing down. And if you know a man who has been drifting, send him this one. Next week, the ground changes. For 5 weeks, we have laid a foundation. Now we start to build on top of it. Because a foundation is not the house. It is what the house stands on. And the next thing God forms in a man, he forms quietly, in the dark, in the repetition, in the days no one claps for and no one sees. We are moving from foundation into formation. And the first thing you will learn is that strength is not built in the big moments. It is built in the small ones, over and over, when no one is watching. Next week, strength is built quietly. Until then, build one thing, stand on one thing. Stand firm in the faith, and I will see you next week.